All right, let's get into it. If you're hoping the Cowboys make a comeback and return to the playoffs, this is the kind of conversation you want to be paying attention to. The latest rankings from Pro Football Focus just dropped, and honestly, they stirred up quite a bit of debate. PFF decided to rank every position group across the entire NFL, sometimes grouping certain units together, like the defensive line, which wasn't broken down into defensive tackles or edge rushers, and also gave their top player picks at each position. Now, when you look at their overall rankings, the Cowboys land at 15th out of all NFL teams based on their current roster. That's not terrible, but it's also not the top-tier powerhouse you might expect from a team with playoff ambitions. Digging deeper, things get a little more puzzling. The quarterback group comes in at 17th, led by Dak Prescott himself. That's already lower than many fans might hope. The running back room is dead last, ranked 32nd, which is a blow to what many believe is one of the most critical parts of any offense. The receiving core stands at 15th right in the middle, and the offensive line is down at 23rd. On the defensive side, the line is solid at 12th, but linebackers drop to 27th, and the secondary sinks even lower at 31st. When you add it all up, only two position groups actually land in the top half of the league: defensive line and the receiving core. So here's the big question. How can PFF rank the Cowboys overall in the top half if just about every individual unit sits near the bottom? It doesn't quite add up. Either the overall ranking is overly generous or the positional rankings are off. There isn't some invisible coaching magic here either. PFF only ranked the top 10 coaches, and Mike McCarthy wasn't on that list, so it's not like a coaching boost is hiding the weaknesses in the roster. There's definitely a disconnect somewhere. Now let's focus on the quarterbacks, because this is where opinions really start to diverge. Most of the quarterbacks ranking in the top 8 are generally agreed upon, although you might argue about exact spots. Personally, I think some players get overrated in these lists, like Justin Herbert being considered a top 5 quarterback. But overall, the names in that elite group make sense. Where it gets tricky is the next tier of quarterbacks. Jared Goff is ranked 9th, Geno Smith, 10th Brock Purdy, 11th Jordan Love, 12th Baker Mayfield, 13th, and then you've got CJ Stroud, Kyler Murray, and Trevor Lawrence all ahead of Dak Prescott, who sits at 17th. Before diving into a rant, here's what PFF's own analyst John Costco said about Dak. He described Dak as a quarterback who thrives against weaker opponents, but struggles when the competition stiffens. In 2023, Dak earned a PFF grade of 90, trailing only Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes before a late season collapse knocked him out of MVP contention. Had it not been for a couple of critical mistakes from teammates, like a fumble that could have cost Dak the MVP, he might have taken home the award. Then in 2024, injuries and a rough start to the season derailed the Cowboys, and Dak was sidelined before he could rebound. According to PFF, to climb back into the top 10 quarterbacks, Dak needs to rediscover his 2023 form and prove he can deliver against the best teams in the league. Here's my beef with that argument. It's totally fair. To be frustrated with the Cowboys' lack of postseason success, the failures in big games, that's a reasonable criticism. But you can't use that to say Dak is a bottom half quarterback and at the same time rank guys like Geno Smith, Kyler Murray, or Trevor Lawrence ahead of him when none of them have done more in the playoffs than Dak Prescott. It's just not logical. If Dak ever acted like Kyler Murray did, refusing to go back in a game or folding under pressure, he wouldn't hear the end of it from fans and analysts alike. The criticism itself isn't the issue. It's the double standard. PFF seems to pick and choose what stats and performances to highlight, ignoring large parts of the picture when it suits their argument. You can't say Dak struggles in big games and then justify placing quarterbacks who've done even worse in those moments above him. That's cherry picking, pure and simple. So I want to hear from you. Is ranking Dak Prescott 17th too low? I think it absolutely is. Even accounting for injuries, Dak should be considered at least a top 15 quarterback in the league. Let me know what you think. Now, moving on to the running back room, which PFF ranked dead last in the NFL. I get why they're down there. Javonte Williams struggled in Denver. Miles Sanders had a disappointing season in Carolina. And Jaden Blue, a 5th-round pick, hasn't quite stepped up yet. The other backs are later-round picks or unproven players. So the low ranking here is fair. And honestly, it might be the least impactful position group for the Cowboys. The running backs themselves don't have the kind of star power or consistency you want. But it's important to remember that these rankings focus strictly on the backs, not the overall running game, which also involves the offensive line and scheme. The receiving core ranking also puzzles me. PFF slots them 15th, but that feels too low given the talent. The top 8 receiving groups in the league include teams like the Eagles, Buccaneers, Bengals, Lions, Niners, Vikings, Dolphins, and Rams, units that are unquestionably elite. But Dallas being 15th behind teams like the Bears, Texans, Falcons, Ravens, and Commanders, that's hard to swallow. CeeDee Lamb is arguably better than any number 1 receiver on those teams, and you can't say their number 2 receivers surpass. George Pickens. Sure, some teams have stronger tight ends like Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews, but overall, Dallas has a productive receiving group. Jalen Waddle, for example, was more productive than most teams' number 3 receivers. And that kind of depth matters. So what probably happened here is PFF double-counted running backs in the receiving rankings, which throws off the numbers. If you've already rated a running back room, why include backs again with the receivers? This skews the results and makes the Dallas receiving core look weaker than it is. CeeDee Lamb was PF's 6th-ranked receiver after all, which shows he's recognized individually. Jake Ferguson, the tight end, came in 17th, which might be a little harsh, but is understandable considering his struggles last year. George Pickens didn't crack the top 32 receivers, which is odd. He ranked 24th in PFF's overall grades last year, so not including him feels inconsistent. To add to the confusion, some of these rankings don't line up with previous evaluations. The Steelers wide receiver duo, which included Pickens and Deontay Johnson, was once considered top 5 or top 10, and now Pickens is ranked behind Lamb. That doesn't make sense, and it's a big shift from earlier consensus. Moving over to the offensive line, PFF slots Dallas at 23rd. This unit's ranking is somewhat volatile. They could move up or down based on performance. No tackles cracked the top 32, which is concerning. Tyler Smith ranked 6th among guards. Cooper Rush was 16th among centers, although PFF rated Rush behind another player who seemed less effective late in the season. The Cowboys' offensive line is full of question marks, especially with young players like Tyler Gayton, whose rookie season earned a low grade. The unit has potential upside, but if Gayton struggles again, the line could seriously drag the team down. It's fair to say they're not elite, maybe hovering around league average, with room for improvement. Defensively, the line ranked 12th, which is decent. They weren't great against the run last season, but they have elite edge rusher Micah Parsons, who graded out 3rd best in the NFL. The interior players had mixed grades. Osa Odigizua ranked 25th among defensive linemen, but was strong as a pass rusher. If the line improves against the run this season, they could jump higher in rankings. The linebacker group was ranked 27th, which isn't surprising given PFF's dislike of Kenneth Murray. The core lacks consistent production and injuries have hurt depth. Some players are serviceable but don't have high ceilings. I'm curious how the ranking would look if they had a healthy DeMarcus Lawrence, a key player who missed time. Finally, the secondary ranked an astonishing 31st behind even the Dolphins, who have a weaker cornerback group. This seems like an exaggeration. While injuries and aging players are concerns, it's hard to buy that the Cowboys' secondary is one of the worst in the league. Don Bland, for example, was ranked low, but calling him cooked at 26 years old doesn't add up. There's talent there, and Donovan Wilson should raise that unit's grade overall. The inconsistency in how PFF grades these players makes it difficult to trust their assessments fully. Looking at other rankings like Sharp Football Analytics paints a different picture. Warren Sharp ranks the Cowboys quarterback group at 13th, the running backs and receivers combined at 8th, the offensive line at 16th, and the defensive front including linebackers at 12th. The secondary jumps to 24th. These numbers feel more balanced and closer to what most fans and analysts expect. So what's the real story here? Are the Cowboys overrated or underrated? Are these rankings fair reflections of the roster? Or are there double standards at play? This debate isn't going away anytime soon. Let me know what you think. Continuing from the previous discussion about the Cowboys roster rankings, it's clear that evaluating a team's talent isn't as straightforward as looking at numbers on a spreadsheet or arbitrary rankings from different analytics sites. There's a lot more nuance involved, especially when you factor in injuries, coaching, schemes, player roles, and intangibles like leadership and consistency. The Dallas Cowboys' current roster is a prime example of how hard it can be to judge talent fairly when the numbers seem contradictory or incomplete. Take, for instance, the way PFF grades individual players compared to overall team rankings. PFF's methodology relies heavily on their grading system, which attempts to evaluate every play by every player to generate a composite score. While it's impressive in its depth, it sometimes falls short when accounting for the context of plays, like the importance of clutch situations, leadership, or how well a player's skill set fits a particular system. In Dallas's case, many players receive grades that don't always match their visible impact on the field or how fans perceive them. One striking example is the Cowboys' offensive line. Even though the group is ranked 23rd overall, the line has had moments where it clearly elevated the offense, especially in pass protection during crucial games. The struggles are there too, with younger players still developing and some inconsistencies in run blocking, but it's not a dumpster fire as the ranking might suggest. When you watch the games, the line's ability to create pockets for Dak Prescott and open lanes for the running backs fluctuates, but it's not fundamentally broken. Context matters here, especially when players like Tyler Smith and Tyler Gayton are still learning the ropes and adjusting to the NFL speed and complexity. Then there's the wide receiver group, which many feel is undervalued by PFF. CeeDee Lamb has steadily improved over his career and has become one of the league's top receivers, yet the Cowboys receiving core is ranked 15th, which places them below teams with arguably weaker or less consistent groups. The presence of Jalen Waddle, who is an elite slot receiver, combined with George Pickens, who has shown flashes of brilliance despite some injury setbacks, creates a dynamic unit that can threaten defenses both deep and in the intermediate game. These players also benefit from chemistry with Dak Prescott, which boosts their production in ways raw grades might not capture. Additionally, tight end Jake Ferguson, although not a top-tier tight end, yet adds versatility with his receiving skills, making the offense more unpredictable and harder to defend. On the defensive side, the line's ranking at 12th is somewhat fair, but masks the real strength Micah Parsons brings. Parsons is not just an edge rusher, he's a game changer who can alter the entire flow of an opponent's offense. His ability to rush the passer, drop into coverage, and set the tone with physicality is rare. The rest of the defensive line has its ups and downs, but Parsons alone elevates the group's impact on the field. Unfortunately, injuries have limited the consistency of the defensive front, which is crucial, because depth matters a lot when trying to wear down opposing offenses. The linebacker core is a sore spot for Dallas, and it's no surprise that PFF ranked them 27th. Kenneth Murray's struggles and health issues have left a void, and the rest of the group hasn't filled it with consistent playmaking or coverage skills. That said, there's potential with younger players who could develop into more reliable options, but that's more hope than reality as of now. Given how important linebackers are in today's NFL, especially with offenses leaning on quick passes and versatile tight ends, this position group's weaknesses could be a significant limiting factor for Dallas's defense. The secondary's ranking at 31st, however, feels overly harsh. Injuries and some aging veterans have hurt the unit's stability, but players like Donovan Wilson offer a promising foundation. Wilson's ability to play both in coverage and near the line of scrimmage adds versatility. Don Blanton's low grade from PFF seems questionable when you consider his age and physical attributes. Often, PFF's grading can miss intangibles like leadership, communication, and the ability to make timely plays that don't necessarily show up as standout statistics. While the secondary isn't a strength for Dallas right now, calling it one of the worst in the league doesn't seem justified. One of the more puzzling aspects of these rankings is how much variance exists between different analytic sources. Sharp Football Analytics, for example, gives a more balanced view of the Cowboys, ranking the quarterback group higher and the running backs and receivers combined more favorably. This suggests that when analysts look at player contributions through different lenses, whether it's pure grading of individual plays or broader team impact metrics, they can arrive at very different conclusions. It underscores the idea that no single metric or ranking system should be taken as gospel. Instead, understanding a team's true strengths and weaknesses requires synthesizing multiple perspectives. The Dallas Cowboys face a crossroads in their roster construction. They have key players with star potential and proven talent, but they also have glaring holes that can undermine their overall performance. The running back room, for example, is not a strength right now, and unless the coaching staff can find creative ways to mask those deficiencies, it will continue to be a weakness that opposing defenses exploit. The offensive line, while capable, needs to solidify its play to provide consistent protection and open running lanes. Without those foundational improvements, even the best quarterback and receivers can struggle to produce. Defensively, the reliance on Micah Parsons to carry the front seven is risky. Injuries or slumps in his performance could expose the team's lack of depth. The linebacker and secondary groups need upgrades or significant player development to reach competitive levels. Defensive success in the NFL often hinges on having playmakers at every level who can create turnovers, pressure the quarterback, and lock down receivers in coverage. The Cowboys, as currently constructed, have pieces of that puzzle, but not the full picture. In the big picture, the Cowboys' mid-tier overall ranking makes sense. They're not a bottom feeder, nor are they a dominant powerhouse. The team sits in the middle of the pack, capable of beating many opponents, but vulnerable to falling short in key moments. This middle ground explains the frustration among fans who want playoff success, but are also aware of the roster's limitations. It's a fine line to walk between optimism and realism. Looking ahead, the Cowboys front office and coaching staff have tough decisions to make. Improving the running back situation might mean investing in a draft or free agency to bring in more reliable, explosive options. Solidifying the offensive line with better talent and development programs could pay dividends in both the passing and running games. On defense, focusing on linebacker and secondary upgrades, whether through new acquisitions or improved coaching techniques, is crucial. Leadership also plays a critical role in shaping the team's trajectory. Dak Prescott is not just a quarterback. He's a leader whose ability to inspire teammates and execute under pressure will determine how far the Cowboys go. His resilience after injuries and setbacks will set the tone for the entire roster. Similarly, players like Micah Parsons need to continue evolving into true franchise cornerstones, leading by example and consistently performing at elite levels. Ultimately, the Cowboys have the raw materials to compete at a high level, but unlocking that potential requires addressing the roster's weaknesses, improving consistency, and executing a clear strategic vision. The conflicting rankings from PFF and other analytics providers highlight how complex and subjective evaluating NFL teams can be. Fans, analysts, and even players must understand that talent evaluation is an ongoing process influenced by many factors, not just numbers on a page. As the season progresses, it will be fascinating to see how these rankings shift based on actual performance. Injuries, breakout players, and coaching adjustments will all influence where the Cowboys land in future evaluations. What remains certain is that this team's narrative is still being written, and the next chapters will reveal whether Dallas can move from a middle-of-the-pack contender to a true playoff powerhouse. The key for the Cowboys is not just to focus on where they stand now, but how they improve moving forward. With the right moves and a bit of luck, they can build on their existing talent to close the gap with the NFL's elite teams. Conversely, ignoring glaring weaknesses or failing to adapt could leave them stuck in the same frustrating middle ground for years to come. In the end, evaluating a team like the Cowboys reminds us that football is more than statistics and rankings. It's about heart determination and the ability to overcome adversity. Whether PFF's rankings are accurate or not, the Cowboys' journey this season will depend on how well the players and coaches rise to those challenges on the field. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Rumors are swirling around the NFL as whispers grow louder that STEFAN GILMORE, one of the league's premier cornerbacks, might be on the verge of signing with the Dallas Cowboys.